Siemanko YouTube, dzień dobry, słuchajcie, dzisiaj będzie grubiutko, tłuściutko, maśniutko, ponieważ jeden z was, Bolomeister, naprowadził mnie na film, który zlikował wszystkie do tej pory pokazane jednostki z najnowszych Heroesów, które powstają, czy Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era. Every creature shown saw for. Jedziemy z koksem.
Well, hey everyone, I am Lockhead, and
No cześć,
I'm making
panie
this video
Lockhead.
because a new Heroes of Might and Magic game was announced, and
Na
honestly,
nadmienię, ten film jest sprzed 2 miesięcy, czyli świeżutko po trailerze Heroesów, jaki otrzymaliśmy.
it looks awesome.
Czyli
I
niektóre
was so hyped that I
informacje-
started watching every new piece of information
Czyli niektóre informacje, które w tym filmie się pojawią, będziemy mogli zweryfikować. W sensie, no bo już mamy reveal całej Necropolii, także
and media that was released, trying to figure out what we are going to see in the game, and well, I think I've managed to spot actually almost every single unit from each faction and many of their upgrades too. So as it took some
dobra,
effort, I
zobaczymy.
just wanted to share my findings with the community and throw some theories about all of these units too while we wait for the game. First of all, the map in general feels pretty alive,
okej.
and there's a lot of movement going on, but not everything that feels alive is
Tu mamy co, leprekuany, czyli to są, nie wiem, jak ja widzę leprekuana, to mi się kojarzy z Heroesami czwórki, no z czwórką, no sorry, po prostu, tak już jest. A tutaj drzewko, które daje nam level upik, okej. Ładne swoją drogą.
actually a playable unit. So, for example, we get some sentient beings that actually act like landmarks, like the Hand Gremlin or Goblin, the Leprechaun, or the Sentient Tree, for example. There are also many animals and creatures, like
Kriterki.
sheep and pigs, and their versions
Jakościowo, no niestety te zdjęcia są za bardzo powiększone i no pikselo za czasami w oko potrafi ukuć z tego co widzę, ale tutaj tego pyrtka, lewy dolny róg, no to już widzieliśmy właśnie też na revealu Necropolis, tam pod koniec sobie on tam chodził tak śmiesznie, nie?
them, some weird
Prosiak,
floating
baran.
starfishes and lava
Okay.
worms too. This animal seems to be just decorative. By the way, a small detail observing the resources found in maps is that while most classic materials are coming
To
back,
też
it
już
looks like
widzieliśmy,
sulfur
prawda?
is missing, at least on the content that has been shown so far.
A,
And
czekaj,
speaking of
faktycznie.
sulfur is missing,
Siarki chyba nie było, albo nie, będę musiał zwrócić uwagę na kolejnym jakimś filmie, jak zostanie wypuszczony od Unfrozen. Czy siarka rzeczywiście jeszcze została pominięta? No nie sądzę, żeby pominęli. No bo z czego smoki będziemy robić? Halo.
at least on the content that has been shown so far. And speaking of sulfur, a faction
Dungeon,
that
no?
traditionally used lots of it was Dungeon, and so far we have
Co
seen
ty
almost every
gadasz?
unit from them as the
Gdzie
7
to
creature
było?
tiles
Kiedy
were
to było?
shown during a developer's Q&A.
Kurde, pozujemy. Co wszystkie jednostki, tylko no nie zaanimowane, ale no wiadomo. Mamy co? Troglodyci, Infernalci, to są upgrade'owane chyba wersje, przynajmniej tu. Shadow Lurker, Albastar Dancer, jakiś szyk. Smeduska, Hydra, czyli Hydra. Jeżeli Hydra jest w dungeonie, to znaczy, że nie będziemy mieli jej. Ha, uwaga, bagnie, jeżeli bagno w ogóle kiedykolwiek powstanie, prawda? Bo wiemy, że będzie 5 zamków. 5 zamków będzie na start, kolejne w DLC-kach. DLC-ki będą zależne od tego, jak sprzedaż im pójdzie, a myślę, że pójdzie całkiem w porządku, że na pewno jednego DLC-ka spokojnie zrobią. I mamy Black Dragony, ale wy jesteście, kurde, śliczne. Minotaury? No, całkiem okej. No po prostu Minotaur sobie w zbroi stoi. No niczym się tak jakoś szczególnie nie wyróżni, no. Jakoś tak spektakularnie, ale smok czarny dojebany jest. Hydra też jest ładna. Meduza. Dzieci, te Shadow Lurkery, no to tych ja osobiście nie lubię. To są moje czyste preferencje. To jest z Heroesów 5 chyba. One tam gdzieś się przewijały, też chyba nawet w dungeonie. Albaster Dancer, no okej.
With Lexiab. The thing
A,
is,
tu są te kropki. Bo każda jednostka w Heroesach tych najnowszych, w Olden Erze, będzie miała 2 upgrade'y. Czyli to by znaczyło, że co? Że to akurat teraz pogrubiona to jest ten jeden z upgrade'ów, tak? Ciekawe jak podstawowe wersje wyglądają.
there might be more creatures that we don't know about, as there is an additional unit shown in the trailer that has always been associated with Dungeon, and I've spotted at least 8 creature types for some other factions too. So for Dungeon we have
To myślę, że możemy już teraz zdementować. Nie będzie 8 stworzeń, kreatur w zamku, tylko będzie 7. Wnioskuję to po revealu pełnym Necropolii, bo tam mieliśmy na tirze 7 wampira jako ostatecznego ostateczną jednostkę. Mieliśmy tak, szkielet, duch, pies, grave robber, sorry, lisz, death knight, wampir. 7, nie 8.
Seen so far the troglodytes, with one upgrade said to deal more damage while the other one splashes.
Spoko wyglądają. Nie doczepię się w sumie. Mógłbym tak specjalnie próbować się doczepić. Nie no, wyglądają ładnie. Ale odstają trochę od tych heroesowych z trójki, tak mi się wydaje. Tamte były bardziej takie pokraśne. Pokraczne.
We got an assassin-like Dark Elf unit. This game takes place in Jedam, which was seen in Might and Magic 8, and there are Dark Elves there. So these aren't the action version of Dark Elves. We are in Enroth, but a best version of it. Next we got a Dancer unit, which is a female Dark Elf holding a chakram, and I think they will be arranging...
Level 1, Alabaster i tu upgrade'owany, no. Myślę, że będzie zasięgowy.
In fact, there is a sequence where a Jasper dancer seems to be summoning a meteor while doing a dance. But this is speculation, as it seems to be summoning a meteor.
Nie. No come on. No czaić, jednostka, która jest stylu trzeciego, napierdalałaby takimi meteorytami z nieba jako umiejętnością. No kurde, no nie chce mi się wierzyć. Chyba, że za dobrze ten meteor wygląda na tle tego, ile damage by robił, bo nie może jednostka poziomu trzeciego napierdalać jakimiś super mocnymi spellami endgame'owymi, a ten wygląda, no sorry, jak taki endgame'owy spell, więc wydaje mi się, że animacja tej postaci jest albo triggerowana za każdym razem, jak jest kastowany jakiś spell, albo po prostu się tak złożyło, że w momencie kastowania tego to tu się zatańczyła.
While doing a dance. But this is speculation, as it could be an idle animation and the meteor being a spell by a hero hidden from this scene. We see the return of some other classic dungeon creatures like the Minotaurs, Medusas and Hydras. This trio comes from Greek mythology and this version of
Poczekaj. Kolego. Olden Horses. Widzimy powrót kilku innych klasycznych stworzeń
like
z lochów.
The Minotaurs, Medusas and Hydras. This trio comes from Greek mythology and this version...
Tylko, że hydry były w Heroesach 3, a głównie na Heroesach trzecich Olden Era bazuje, były na bagnie, nie w lochu.
of dungeon in general seems to draw a lot of inspiration from Greek or Roman themes. Minotaur lords are said to be able to buff close allies, while Minotaur warriors get stronger when they're hit. And we have seen a Minotaur Lord dealing a multi-target melee attack. Medusas are back as ranged units, and at least the Medusa Queens seem to have an area of effect attack, which seems to be a recurrent mechanic for many shooting.
Tamten o wiele lepszy. Ale pamiętajmy, filmik sprzed 2 miesięcy, do premiery jeszcze daleko. Wszystkie te tutaj rzeczy, które widzimy, zaklęcia, spele, umiejętności, to może zostać podrasowane, zmienione i wyglądać totalnie inaczej, lepiej lub gorzej.
As we will see. Finally worth noting, the upgrade names for the Hydra come from Ulysses' Odyssey, where Charybdis and Scylla were monsters living very close to each other, so we got even more Greek influence.
Fajnie.
And finally, you can
Mają takie smaczki, zawsze stosują tam, gdzie tylko mogą. Tak, tutaj z greckiej mitologii do nazewnictwa hydr, natomiast jest jeszcze ten grave robber, którego wersja jedna przyzywa psy i właśnie ta wersja, która jest w stanie, przyzywa, która tworzy te psy, ma z tyłu na sarkofagu łeb wilka, jakby sygnaturę. Bardzo fajny smaczek.
have dungeon without its dragons, especially the black
Ładnie
dragon.
wyglądają te
The
smoki.
alternate upgrade is called Albino Dragon, and while during the rebuild all units got some red lighting on
Podoba
them,
mi się połączenie
on the map
czarnego
they
ze
see a
złotym.
bit more albino. I'm not sure if we have seen the base version. There is a dragon that could be that on the trailer, but it looks different enough, so I'm showing it later in the video.
To pytanie, który jest z nich podstawową
So,
wersją?
this seem to be the 7 creatures from dungeon, but as I said earlier, there seems to be an 8th one,
Nie.
which will be what clearly looks like a beholder slash evil eye, another recurrent dungeon unit. Now, this could be many things. It could be a neutral creature with dungeon alignment.
No,
It could belong to a
raczej
different...
raczej neutralna, jakby miał obstawiać. No, nie sądzę, żeby dawali full reveal zamku Necropolii, ukrywając jednego unita jeszcze, który jest na tierze 8. No sorry. To by było głupie po prostu.
faction, but
It's
I doubt that, as
neutralny.
the other factions are already crowded, as we will see later in the video. It could be a summon unit, or maybe even the
Znaczy, jeżeli
dungeon
to jest
version of
jednostka,
Ballista.
tak, no.
It could be many things, but
Albo
I want to
zespeli, no
leave this
neutralne
situation
coś.
door open for the possibility of maybe an extra unit per faction that could replace an existing one, something like maybe some of the unit towers are in a pool with another unit and you choose 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4, for example. We have seen choices like that before in Heroes 4 and also Heroes 7. So it could be a possibility, and the reason why I think this could happen is that there are other factions with a similar problem. And one of those factions will be the Temple, which is your typical heaven/castle faction.
No, z tego też
We
było
have
sporo.
already been
To jest
shown
Heros.
8 different creatures
No.
for this faction, and 7 of them have been shown with their upgrades. Some of the typical units from
Ja to sobie zapauzujmy na momencik, schowajmy na pisiory. Dobra, tych widzieliśmy pyrtków. Nie wiemy, jakie mają w sumie zdolności. Te wersje dwie, nie wiem, czy się jakoś bardzo od siebie różniły. Nie zaprezentowali tego chyba jeszcze w tym. W sensie była pokazana ta jednostka, ale nie było pokazane, jaką ma abilitkę.
on this archetype are coming back, like the swordsmen that have been shown with their 2 upgrades. One of the upgrades reminds me a bit of the Heroes 3 Crusaders actually, though the image is a bit blurry. We also got to see a couple of variants of marksmen/crossbowmen,
Wszyscy też byli, no.
which now seems to have some sort of bird on their shoulder, and I wonder if the bird will be related to their skills.
A tak, tu dobrze mówi, bo rzeczywiście ten ptak, który jest na ramieniu, to jest jego abilitka. I to jedna wersja ma.
At least one of the variants has been said to be able to shoot twice with a skill, but the skill requires some sort of build-up. What seems to be a new unit is some sort of female light priestess.
Kapłankę też widzieliśmy, tylko nie jestem pewien, czy widzieliśmy ją w 2 wersjach już. To jest podstawowa, tak, jest level 1, level 2 i level ten. Podoba mi się ogólnie połączenie koloru skóry ciemniejszego z białymi włosami. Z czasów Sztorm z
maybe a
X-Men.
Vestal, and we've already seen all of her variants. There seems to be a cult of the sun in Jedam, so they're probably related to that, and I think they will be able to buff their allies, as the devs have mentioned that Temple's theme will revolve around buffs and synergies with buffs. The Griffins make their return too,
Gryfki
with
też
armored
były, no.
upgrades that look like Royal Griffins in a
Chociaż nie widziałem chyba jeszcze do tej pory zwykłej wersji tej, bez upgrade'u. Ale ładne, gryfy były bardzo w porządku. Oczywiście złoty ładniejszy niż ten srebrny, nie?
darker version, which could be a Battle Griffin. Then we have a female Battle Monk or War Cleric
O,
that
ci są
is
dojebany
actually a melee
design mają.
unit, using some sort of Blessed Flail. This is another unit that I suspect will be able to cast buffs on her team. The last human unit will be a return of the classic cavalry units. We know that at least the unupgraded version is called Light Cavalry. I don't know if light here refers to weight or alignment, but it will be a fun play on words if the upgrades
Kawaleria
were
musi
called
być,
something
nie?
like Heavy Cavalry and Radiant Cavalry. A new unit that got some fun stalking is what seems like some sort of celestial archer. This is an angel. This looks like some energy being inside a hollow armor wielding a bow.
I to jest jedna z tych jednostek, które osobiście mi się nie podobają. No design mają ogólnie spoko. Design, ale nie pasuje mi to trochę do Heroesów. Uniwersum Heroesów, no nie? Po prostu to wygląda jak Protoss.
Being inside a hollow armor wielding a bow. This creature has been shown using both single target projectiles and RF effect shots. We even got to see a variant version that looks like a darker or decayed design, which might hint at some more severe or inquisitorial branch of the temple. And finally, the 8th creature that we've seen
A
from this
tych też
faction.
widzieliśmy, to jest
Now this
dojebane.
looks like an actual angel with heavy influences from the seraphs seen in Heroes 6.
Bardzo mi się podoba ten design. Jeszcze takie płonące skrzydła tutaj, nie? Szkoda, że tutaj nie mamy animacji tego pokazanego i 2 miecze różne, w sensie ten jakiejś boskości od światła, a ten po prostu od, no, boskości. Ale
And 7
kozackie.
wielding 2 different blades. I don't think this is an alternate of the Celestial Archer, as they don't even look like they are the same species, and normally upgrades look like more elaborate models of their base versions, with the same poses and animations. We haven't seen variants for it yet. We have seen them in the adventure map, but summonable and neutral units can be found there too, so it doesn't confirm that this is a proper unit from a town, and it still could be many things. But yeah, this faction will feel incomplete if these angels aren't their tier 7 creature, which
Znaczy tak, dopóki my nie dostaniemy pełnego revealu templa, tak, to nie będziemy wiedzieli, czy to jest jakby rzeczywiście ich unit, czy neutralny, bo neutralnym też może być. Ja zakładam, że to jest ostateczny ten tier 7 templa.
will relegate the Celestial
czas
Archers
pokaże.
to tier 6, I guess. And following the thought, now
To
here's
jest
another
Necropolia,
faction
dobra,
that,
zobaczymy.
while
To
we've
możemy
only seen
zweryfikować
7
w
of their creatures
100%
so
całe,
far,
nie?
and everyone has been heavily hinted at.
Bo było
And this faction
i filmik, no, mam na kanale odnośnie całej tej prezentacji, gdzieś tutaj wam adnotację do tego umieszczę.
will be Necropolis. The first creature, of course, will be the skeletons, and just
To
like
się
in
zgadza,
Heroes 5,
dokładnie tak
we got
wyglądają, no.
a ranged variant and an armored one to sponge more damage. Then we got some Thambi Hounds. This type of unit was commonly seen in Inferno, but with their redesign as a
Tu się prawie zgadza, jedna wersja pieska się nie zgadza. Ta jest zielona i wersja B tutaj opisana. Mamy takiego właśnie krwistego, który ma lifesteala. I mamy takiego tutaj potem zielonego, który daje chyba dotkę.
more insectoid faction, it made sense to place hounds in
Trucizna po
Necropolis,
ataku.
as many fantasy settings employ similar undead hounds. They seem to use some spectral bit, which I guess one of the upgrades will need, as it seems to be headless. Ghosts are also coming back, and all
Dobra,
of their
też się
variants
zgadza.
seem to be holding some sort of lantern, which is an element that has been associated with ghosts in other fantasy wars before, and I wonder if they will use them for their skills. Now, very interesting new creature type is what has
No,
been
to
called by
też
the
się
devs
zgadza.
as Grave Dig.
Powtórzę się, zajebisty design jest tej postaci, tej jednostki. Znaczy w większości jest zajebisty, no nie oszukujmy się. Jeżeli oczywiście się styl graficzny podoba, ale
And we
design...
have seen a couple of versions of them too. This
Miodzio.
unit has been said to be able to summon skeletons, and I think it's a cool addition that brings some utility instead of being just another mid-shelled slot like a zombie unit, for example. Leeches are also coming back. We've seen a couple of variants of them
Lisze
too,
też się zgadzają.
and at least one of them seems to have an area of effect projectile, which seems to be a recurring theme. Also, I really dig their melee attack animation. And speaking of returning units, here are the
No
Death
to
Knight
słuchajcie, to jest mój ulubieniec. To jest moje numero uno po prostu. No, śliczny jest. Śliczny jest. Bardzo mi się podoba, powtórzę się, ale mega pomysł, że nie siedzi na zwykłym koniu z kości czy czarnym rumaku, jak to było w Heroesach 3, tylko że to jest jakby szkielet Fellhuntera z Warcrafta na przykład, jakiejś takiej innej bestii
Knights / Dread
niż
Knights.
koni.
And we've seen the 3 variants too, with a more basic version and other 2 with purplish and cyan colored auras respectively. The last Necropolis unit that we've seen so far in the game is what looks like a bone dragon. The anatomy of the head, torso,
Dobra, no to tutaj uwaga, dementuję. To jest jakiś budynek. Nie wiemy dokładnie co to jest, czy to jest jakiś shrine, czy się tutaj jakieś jednostki kupuje, czy whatever. To nie powiedzieli nam twórcy, ale to nie jest jednostka z Necropolii, tak? Jednostką z Necropolii ostateczną będą wampiry, które są właśnie rzeczywiście w tym budynku tutaj produkowane, tak jak przypuszczałem, czy tak jak można było się domyślić, bo to jest jedyny budynek, który gdzieś tam sobie krwią jakąś opływa, więc jakby miały być wampiry, no to produkowane właśnie tutaj. I nie ma kościanych smoków. I na szczęście nie ma, bo one były, kurwa, no były tak nudne, że to jest koniec. No.
and arms look very similar to other stone dragons, with small eyes near the snout. It seems to be missing its wings though, probably decayed, but this wouldn't be the first time we got a wingless dragon. So that will make 7 units from this faction that have been shown, but as I said, there seems to be another creature that has been hinted at a lot, and this is also a creature that has been present in every single iteration of Necropolis. Of course, I am talking about vampires, and we actually got art for a
Dobrze myślał. Bardzo dobrze myślał. Troszeczkę się pomylił, no ale wiecie. Research i tak, chapeau bas.
couple of them, although they might be hero portraits. Plus, there is a Victorian mansion emanating blood in the Necropolis town screen, so it will make a lot of sense if you could hire vampires there. Some devs have even playfully hinted at them, which will keep the 8 creatures theory going. But let's put theories aside and let's take a look at the brand new faction. This faction has been hinted by the devs as something
Nowy zamek, który będzie czym?
that will be rebuilt in the future, but so far we've seen more from them than we've seen from some
Dawaj
officially
jednostki.
announced factions like Hive or Sylvan. We got their town screen and at least 7 different types of units already shown in game.
Wiecie, co mi to przypomina? To jest bohater. Najprawdopodobniej przypomina mi bardzo tego, z tego ujęcia Death Knighta z WoWa. Zarówno postać, jak i jego ten wierzchowiec, mount, no nie?
Along with many of their upgrades. This faction seems to have a
Czyli
theme of ice mixed
lodowy.
with deep sea creatures, and some fans are speculating that they could
To nie trafiłem, bo myślałem, że będzie Conflux, coś takiego, jako ten 5. zameczek. A to taki vibe'ik tych też, Jezu, jak to było, z Gry o Tron. Tych lodowych
be the
tych
Bori,
potworów,
which
jak
are
on się
the
nazywa, nie
original elves
pamiętam.
of Eirathia, also known as the Snow Elves, and their nation
Śmieszne
happens to be
elfy.
located in Jedem, which was the setting for Might and Magic 8, and this game takes place on a past version of Jedem. So we have to wait for more details, but that's a pretty
Ale to
interesting
jednostki
connection if
jakieś
you ask
wykop.
me. Now for the creatures that
Okej,
seem to
widzisz.
belong to this faction.
Jellyfish, meduza. No i zajebiście, w sensie ta tak biednie ta wygląda. Ta wygląda całkiem spoko. No tak, to tam zwykła, musi być zwykła wersja, taka byle jaka, nie? Powiedzmy, znaczy nie obrażając jakby designu, tak? Ale no ta, no okej.
We got a couple of sea creatures like these floating jellyfish monsters that kind of remind me of the Wind Rider enemies from Guild Wars. And we've also seen some variants of what seems to
Jakaś
be a flying
płaszczka, kurde,
stingray.
strasznie są zapikselowane te rysunki. Stingray, no jakaś coś na zasadzie płaszczki będzie, ale to jest lodowy i co? I mamy takie morskie te?
The humanoid units from
Ooh.
this faction all seem very unique. We got these knights riding some sort of
Mamy, słuchajcie, rycerza, który jeździ na koniku morskim, nie? W sensie ten to wygląda w ogóle jak ksenomorf jakiś, ten wczesna faza obcego. Ten tutaj już troszeczkę po ewolucji, a ten w ogóle nie wygląda, bo nic nie widać na tym screenie.
sea slugs or maybe eels. One of the variants seem to have multiple tongues, and they all seem to leave some icy trail. They look a bit like spiritual successors of the Grim Riders from Heroes 5. We've also seen this sort of priestess slash sorceress slash matriarchs that got huge tentacles sprouting
Sea Witch, ej, to jest bardzo fajny, pomysłowy design. I coś mi to przypomina, tylko nie jestem sobie w stanie przypomnieć co. Gdzieś może delikatnie, ale to nie o to mi chodzi. Evelyn z Ligi Legend, ale nie, gdzieś było coś takiego, co miało takie kudły. Może ze Star Warsów te. Nie pamiętam jak się ta rasa nazywała z tymi takimi dwoma na łbie.
from their heads, and actually, they seem to walk on those tentacles as their feet don't even touch the ground. All of the variants are holding an item that will probably act as some sort of magic catalyst, so I will expect them to be a ranged unit and maybe also a spellcaster. And the third humanoid unit seems to be some sort of
Cryomancer.
Cryomancer mixed with a Super Saiyan. Honestly, everything about these guys just scream badass with their looks, their pose, and their animations. I don't think we have seen
Kurde, tak jak ten atak Minotaura, to był chyba jakiś specjalny wtedy atak z tego Shockwave'a tak napierdalał z góry. Taki ten. Kurde, no super wygląda.
anything like them before in a Heroes game, honestly, and they look really cool, pun intended. This other unit seems to be a mix of sea monster and alien creature. It has
Sea
lots of
monster.
tentacles, wings, a head with some bioluminescent lights and a weird mandible. Each variant seems to have a different seaweed color too. Interesting design nonetheless, although it's a bit hard to tell what's going on with them. The last creature we have seen so far from this faction will be this corpulent humanoid with amphibian features sitting on a throne.
Ej, akurat ostatnio czytałem Dune, no to mi przypomina tego Harkonnena głównego, co było tak gruby, że nie mógł po prostu chodzić, tylko tam lewitował na tym swoim urządzeniu, nie?
This briefly seen in the trailer before he creates a huge magical explosion. There are also a couple of variants of it found in the map on different shots, so we can confirm this is a chunk creature. We don't know if this will be the strongest creature from the new faction. It looks like, at least offensively, it can be a powerhouse. We've only seen 7 creatures from this faction so far, so we might be missing some sort of Leviathan, Kraken or Sea Dragon, but this could be a good candidate for a tier 7 spot. Next up we got a new take on a classic faction. So in this game, instead of the more traditional iteration
Trochę z tych jednostek już widzieliśmy, tego nowego Inferno slash Hive'a. Wyglądają nieźle,
of Inferno
ale to
with
globalne.
imps, demons and other archetypical creatures, we got the Hive, which apparently is some sort of insect faction that has been corrupted by demons. This main theme makes some units a bit hard to differentiate at a distance from each other, particularly...
Wiecie co? Dojebanie wygląda Heros tego zamku, ale za cholerę mi nie pasuje do vibe'u tego zamku. No bo skoro mamy Hive, który jest robalami nawiedzonymi przez demony, czy tam dotkniętymi przez demony, jak zwał, tak zwał, to czemu mamy takiego demonicznego lorda na rumaku, nie?
We got
Just
three
dobra,
different
nie
types
widzieliśmy
that
jeszcze
at first
wszystkich
glance I
jednostek
wasn't sure if
z
they
tego
were
z
related
Hive'a.
to each other, like different variants of the same creature, but I ended up finding at least 2 variants of each family, which means they belong to 3 different types of creatures. The first ones will be these winged insects that have big fly eyes.
Kha'Zix z Ligi Legend. A? Widzieliście? Tutaj wygląda gorzej na tych niż na tym. Ach, bo to jest z mapy strategicznej, a to jest z mapy tej, z walki. Okay.
They remind me a bit of a mix between Tentomon and Cauterimon from the Digimon series. Next we got another bipedal demonic insect. They look bulkier with big claws, horns, multiple eyes, a flaming tongue that seems to always stick out of...
Bardzo ładnie jest przedstawiony ogień. Znaczy ogień, coś co jest po prostu gorące i rozżarzone, aż podoba mi się.
Their mouth. Something that looks like a ponytail and 2 big stingy appendages coming from their back. They seem to have a front flip attack animation where they spin hitting their opponents with those stings. And another creature that I at first thought could be related with the previous one, but at closer inspection clearly
To
is.
jak Roach ze StarCrafta. Nie, no sorry, ja po prostu rybale do mnie nie przemawiają, no. Chociaż no ten wcześniejszy, co jak Cho'Gath wygląda, no to kurde ładny jest, no. Ładny.
Is this thing that stands on 4 legs with a back end that reminds me a bit of an earwig or maybe an oil beetle with a sting. We have seen another flying creature, and I hope at least one of the variants is called a firefly, because, well, it flies and has fire. I think we have only seen one version of them, but I guess it could be a new take on classic dragonflies repurposed to this demonic insect faction. Another pure back will be these volcanic spiders, and we can see 3 different versions with different patterns and crowns.
Z materiałów.
Also, I almost missed this one,
no,
as I think it's only been seen in a single shot,
Wąż taki.
but you can clearly see it looks like some sort of magma worm with antlers or maybe a snail, and I think it's coming from the ground, but it's a bit hard to tell. It looks bigger than other creatures though. And the 7th and so far last creature will be this sort
Asmodan z Diablo 3 na 4 kurde tych kikutach z kosą jeszcze w ulepszonej wersji.
of amalgam of different insects and a humanoid demonic torso wielding a scythe. So far, this is the one creature that resembles a demon the most, and the fact that it is shown fighting an angel makes me think it might be the faction's top creature, but we still don't know too much about this faction. And speaking about the faction that we need to know a lot more about, I got a bunch of creatures that could either be neutral units or maybe belong to the Sylvan faction. There are some that I'm pretty sure belong to Sylvan, and I will
Tak,
get to
o
them.
Sylwanie
But
najmniej
for
chyba
now,
wiemy.
I'm
No i
going
na
to
tej...
show a few of the ones that
Nie,
I think
najmniej
are
o
true
Sylwanie.
neutral creatures. The first one will be the
Nie,
halflings.
proszę, nie,
Halflings
nie,
have
nie,
been
nie, nie,
neutral
nie,
before,
tylko nie
and
oni,
they
tylko
don't
nie
seem to
oni.
fit with the temple factions,
Yes.
and they look too dressed and civilized to belong with this game's Sylvan either. Next one will be what seems to be the game's cute mascot. I'm not really sure what this thing is, maybe some sort of magic familiar. I think they're neutral
No.
instead of Sylvan, as some have speculated, as Sylvan's kind of fiery creatures tend to look a bit more wild and untamed in this game. Also, Sylvan already has too many low tier candidates, and this doesn't look like a powerful monster.
A Sylvan
And
to
here's
bardziej
where
takie
we got
te
a handful of creatures that
elfy,
could belong to
roślinki,
Sylvan, or
jakieś
maybe
drzewa,
none of them does.
trenty.
There are arguments in favor and against for each of them. We got this huge flying serpent
na
that
przykład.
resembles some kind of Quetzalcoatl.
Chociaż szczerze, tutaj po designie tego robala jakby, to i po tych, to czekajcie, ważka, jak była w trójce, to bardziej do bagna by pasował ta kreatura.
It even got some ornaments that seemed to be inspired by Mesoamerican culture, right? Sylvan in this game has this tribal and wild theme, so I think this has a chance to be a part of the faction, but I'm not completely sure, especially because we have some other candidates for tier 6 and 7 creatures already in place. Next, there is this dragon, which at first I thought might
dragon.
be the unupgraded version
Sorry,
of the black
ale tutaj na tym ujęciu nie wygląda jakby to był smok, tylko jakiś taki, kurde, bardziej robakowaty. No jak się przyjrzymy, no jest tutaj ogoń, to skrzydło po prostu mu się tak zgięło.
and albino dragons from Dungeon, but the design is different enough for me to think this belongs to a different branch of dragons, particularly its head and color scheme. Now, is this related to gold dragons previously seen in Sylvan factions?
No,
Could be,
może
or it
być
could be something
nawiązanie do
else.
Złotego Smoka,
So at
jasne.
least for now, I'm not ready to claim which faction, if any, these monsters belong to. Speaking of dragons, this guy here is totally a fairy dragon. The devs themselves have talked about a smaller and redesigned
O wiele ładniejsze coś takiego jest niż ta zwykła, kurde, wróżka, co była w Fluxie, nie?
return of fairy dragons, and yeah, this one completely fits their description. Fairy dragons were neutral in Heroes 3, and they belong to the equivalent of Sylvan in Heroes 4, so they could end up going either way, I guess. They don't look like high-tier creatures though. But something that really looks like
Phoenix?
a high-end unit is the Phoenix. We see them casting a huge fire explosion during the trailer, and also during a portion of the cinematic,
No,
and
było
some of them
rzeczywiście
show
na
up in the map in
cinematiku.
some shots. I'm very close to actually leveling them as Sylvan, but I think I will need some extra evidence to be completely sure, as they've been neutral summons in some iterations, and the one in the cinematic could be attacking both sides. Another argument for them being Sylvan is that the models found in the adventure map look like they could be variant versions, and only Tony units have variants, but this might be what they look like when their light effects are off, so I can say for sure. And now for the units that I'm certain belong to the Sylvan faction, we have many that appear on the
czyli masz
official art
jakieś,
fighting
dawaj.
against Necropolis, and we have seen them in game already. So far, Sylvan is probably the faction that we know the least about. We don't even have their turn screen yet, but at least we got this art and the clips from the cinematic featuring them.
Dobra, dawaj grafę.
What I assume will be their tier 1 unit
Kurwa, żałuję, że to powiedziałem. O Jezu, co to jest? Sprajcik jakiś. Takie, no kurde, to takie gówno, nie? Taka popierdółeczka. To śmiesznie wygląda, to już trochę lepiej.
is this creature that seems to be a redesign on sprites, looking a bit more chubby, almost like a flying plant armadillo, and one of them is seen in the art next to the Sylvan hero. Then probably their tier 2 unit that looks like the
Faudy.
backbone of their infantry in both the cinematic and the
Nie, to na bank musi być z tego zamku Sylwana, jeżeli to wyhaczył na tym. Do driadek jest podobne, co? Tylko, że co gra fantazy, to driada inna. W Warcraftie trójcy driada to jest normalnie jak centaur.
their art are these female fawn warriors, and at first I thought there were two separate tiers of them because some are wielding a sword and others a bow. But if you look at the models and their poses, they are clearly variations of each other. They are rigged the same
No
way,
tak.
and the only thing that changes is the hand that holds a weapon. You could change those items and they will fit perfectly. In Heroes 5 we had a couple of range units with alternate upgrades that
Ugh.
lost the ability to shoot in exchange for other skills, and I think that's what's going to happen here. Another unit that is present in the art
Ale
is this sort of
dojebany
bulky
druid.
druid covered in mushrooms, maybe some sort of troll or ogre magi, or
Kurde, świetny design tego jest. Jak ten się nazywa? Grzybowy jakiś, no mushroom druid. I ten też, nie no jak? Mushroom druid. No ten tak, bo ma grzyba, a ten czemu mushroom? Nie, ten jakiś inaczej byś powinien nazywać. Ale zajebiście zrobione, co? Kurwa.
just some bulkier faun or a dendroid. They have bestial legs, they seem to be magic casters, but we don't know too much about them. The fourth creature that we can see in the art and also
Rock
in game
mortar
is
monster.
this rock monster. They seem to be living rock formations standing on 4 legs. One of them looks like it has ramming horns and the other features
Ciekawie wygląda, w sensie to jest tak średnio widoczne, to też, ale trochę lepiej, ale wiecie, z tego ujęcia, wiecie co mi przypomina? Demogorgona. Demogorgona ze Stranger Things po łbie.
more vegetation. Interestingly, both have some sort of orifice on their backs, so perhaps they could act as some sort of nature-based mortars. These scully stacks don't appear in the art, but we have already seen a couple of versions of them, and
też
they might
ciekawe.
even have some Kirin-esque features. At least they remind me a bit of the Kirins from Guild Wars. The Asian games had
O,
Kirins,
takiego
but they
bym
were different
zobaczył
from this
chętnie,
design.
nie?
And finally, there are 2 other creatures that, although I've only been able to catch a single version of each one, they just look like they fit too well with the Sylvan theme, to the point that it will be really weird if they weren't Sylvan unit. The first one will be this bulky Forest Warden that looks like a mix of armored humanoid and dendroid with a big sword, and it just
Jak
looks like
ten,
what
Elf Spirit z Doty 2.
Sylvan will employ as a tankier unit. And then at the last, we've seen these giant flowers in some shots, and
A
they even appear
faktycznie.
on the map. If you look closely,
Był taki kwiatek w tym, na jednym z tych, z ostatnich, no, trailerów, z materiałów, które wypuścili.
it seems like there is a bean in the middle of the petals with
Ja
long
właśnie w
antennas
wywiadzie
shaped like the
twórców.
flower stigma and the stamen, and the whole thing seems to be levitating. So it looks like the giant flower is just the decorative cover for a small creature in the middle of it, but the resolution isn't too high to clearly see what's going on here. So that will be 7 creature types that I think are for sure part of the Sylvan faction, and then we have a group of 4 where more than one could also belong to the faction in my opinion. And I know the 8 creatures per faction is just theory crafting on my part, but again, it's getting pretty crowded, right? And that will be basically every creature that I've been able to spot so far.
Dobra.
If you've reached this part of the video, thanks for watching and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments.
Dzięki
And if you know
za,
about any other creature that I may have missed, it will be really
dzięki za research. Kurde, ale dobrze, dobry research zrobił chłop i to było zaraz po trailerze, że się tak dogrzebał. Ja sam muszę w takim razie lepszy robić. Dzięki za polecenie tego filmu swoją drogą. Słuchajcie, czekamy w takim razie na reveal kolejnych zamków. Dzięki, tyle ode mnie, że się podobało, to like lub łapka w górę, chociaż to jest to samo. Komentarz dla zasięgu też się przyda. Subskrypcja oczywiście, jeżeli tego jeszcze nie robicie, i do zobaczenia w kolejnych materiałach. Trzymajcie się. Cześć.